Alright, are you ready to get super confused? Because I definitely am right now. So, a couple days ago, I published a video that was up for about 10 minutes before I was informed by Mellow Online of Sentinels of the Store that some of the information in it was incorrect. Now, this is usually due to me being an idiot, and it's happened before. Everyone makes mistakes. That's a thing that happens. This time, though, it's because Valve gave a bunch of people the wrong information about the scenario and what was going on with it. So, what Valve basically did was they said to various news organizations, and this was reported on, and on a lot of those articles it's still there and not changed at all, which I find absolutely ridiculous. They said that the game Active Shooter was a game developed by Ada Berdiev, who had recently been kicked off of Steam a couple months ago, who had returned under a new developer name, Revived Games, and that seemed to be the case, and it still is connected to this whole thing a little bit, but it's not really that simple, and this is where it gets super confusing. So while I originally reported, based on what Valve had said, that it was Ada Berdiev that made the game, that isn't entirely the case, so I took the video down because of that. So the game Active Shooter is a game that, in my opinion, should not have garnered as much attention as it did, but in order for that to happen, Valve would have basically had to do their jobs and curate their store, and probably not put a game that's solely about being a shooter in a school onto their platform. So when that happened, and you can be I know you can be the shooter or the cops hunting down the shooter, the whole thing is stupid, right? And it's an incredibly lazy asset flip. Because of that, though, because of the context of it and what it was called and what the store page listed it as and stuff like that, the mainstream media got a hold of it. Big kerfuffles ensue that leads to Valve taking it down. Very quickly, knee-jerk reaction, and we run into a scenario like this. So yeah, Berdiev is still involved in this to a certain extent, but it's to a weird degree that I've never really seen on the Steam store before, or have heard of. It might be more common that we just don't hear about stuff like this, but basically what happened is Berdiev's bank account was being used knowingly by Berdiev by Anton to get money from the Steam sales over into Berdiev's account, which is based in the US, so that they could get it to Anton's Russian account faster and probably make extra money off of monetary conversions, that sort of thing. So Valve was going through the bank records for this developer, and they saw Berdiev's name on it and were like, hey, you're kicked off of Steam, why are you back? Get out of here. And it's worth noting that they named both Anton and Berdiev in the initial email that was sent out to them, but they didn't really do that when they were talking to the press and making statements about it. So the initial thought was that Berdiev had come back to Steam under this sock puppet account and was basically trying to dupe the system. And while everything I explained is still super shady, it isn't exactly what Valve said, and it did warrant me taking down the video and correcting myself. And hey, I understand this is very hard to figure out and comprehend, so I've gone ahead and included some visual aids, okay? Alright, so we're standing here in my shower right now. I thought this would be the best place for a visual representation for some goddamn reason. I bought myself some dry erase markers, so hopefully this doesn't damage my shower beyond repair. I have no idea how any of this stuff works, so we're just gonna hope for the best here. So, first of all, we have Valve and Berdiev. Berdiev is represented by the pickled Rick that I've poorly drawn right there, and Valve is obviously the Valve logo that I've drawn. So, we know that these guys are connected first here, because Berdiev at one point was selling his games on Steam, as you tend to do, whether you're a real developer or an asset flipper, doesn't really matter at this point, does it? And Berdiev was also affiliated with Acid, who is represented by this little scientific beaker that I have created here. Actually, I'm not happy with that. Hold on. Doesn't look a whole lot like Acid, does it? There we go. Okay. So we got some green acid in there too. So that one is Acid, who is the publisher of Active Shooter, and he is friends with Berdiev. They run on the same Russian key farming websites, and they've known each other for a little while. Now the thing is, Acid is also connected to the developer of Active Shooter, who is actually the same goddamn person, and that's represented by the little turd that I've drawn right there. So they go by the name of Anton. These are the same people. And obviously, they are connected up here as well. So, we can see that everything is a goddamn circle. It's goddamn ring theory just like Star Wars, but here's where things get super interesting. So a few months ago, Valve decided to axe Berdiev because they didn't want him on the storefront anymore after he got a DMCA takedown notice by the creators of Rick and Morty for his game Pickled Rick. Again, hence the little logo I've drawn right there. Now, what happened after that is Valve thought that Berdiev himself had created Active Shooter and was posing as Revived Games. So basically they thought, hold on, I gotta get a different color here, otherwise it's gonna get super goddamn confusing, isn't it? So Valve thought that Berdiev had made Active Shooter, when in reality that was misdirected, and Acid Games, and therefore Anton, who is the developer, Revived Games, had actually created it. But it doesn't stop there, and we need even more goddamn colors because I'm not content yet. What was the reason that Valve thought that Berdiev had created this game? It's because when they went into the bank statements for the revenue garnered from the sales of Active Shooter, they saw that the money was going to Ada Berdiev. So Valve was basically like, fuck it, we think that Berdiev and Revived Games are the same goddamn person, so we're gonna axe off Revived Games and take away Active Shooter off of the storefront along with their 6 other titles. But here's where it gets even crazier. So basically, the reason that Berdiev's bank account details were showing up on the accounts for Revived Games and Acid is because that Berdiev had authorized the use of his accounts to go over towards Revived Games so he could help out his friend Anton get the money earlier back in Russia. Basically, the way Steam works is it's a lot quicker to get your money if you're based in the US, and transferring it over to another country takes longer, and you can also probably convert that US money to get a bit of extra profit. Now here's where Valve messed up. So Valve found out about this, and they found out that Berdiev's accounts were linked to it, and they decided to axe off Revived Games, right? They sent out an email that was to Revived Games as well as Berdiev, and they basically said, hey, we know that you're using Berdiev's accounts and that he's involved in this, so we're axing you off. What they didn't do was tell the press and everyone that wanted to report on it that it was 2 of them and not just Berdiev developing the game. Therefore, you end up in a giant muddy scenario. I really hope this fucking washes off. Moment of truth. Yeah, there we go.
So yeah, this entire scenario is honestly very weird. It's very odd that Valve was so knee-jerk in their reaction. Usually, I mean, when Valve does anything, it's usually knee-jerk, but they don't necessarily act as angry as they did. They seemed right pissed off when they were giving the quotes to websites like Kotaku and stuff, and they were feeding them incorrect information, which is absolutely ridiculous. And at the same time, the incorrect information has not been updated on the majority of these articles that are still to this point reporting that Ada Berdiev was the sole developer and have not mentioned the other person at all. So, you know, for the people that wrote those articles and aren't updating it, could you maybe do that? I'm not the biggest fan of asset flips, as you can probably tell, but I still like having the truth and facts go out there that are correct and stuff. And updating articles, even if they're old, even if nobody is seeing them, ensures that if someone does find it later down the line, that you're not giving them the wrong information, because that can be very confusing. It's something called basic journalistic integrity. So if you could hop on over and revise your mistakes, that would be mighty appreciated. I'm just running to the